The first question. Dear Ajahn, may I seek your guidance on the following questions? How can we make wholesome aspirations to attain enlightenment in this lifetime?
Well, as you say, make wholesome aspirations to attain enlightenment in this lifetime. Do it. You can do it every day if you wish. The best time to make wholesome aspirations is when you're kind of focused. So it may be a time of day that is part of your regular routine where you do some chanting, pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, you chant, you meditate, maybe listen to Dhamma sometimes. If it's a sort of regular time, often you get a certain good energy then and you're more focused. And it could be, say, at the end of your practice session, if you have to, you've got a period of time, you say, I'm going to do chanting, meditation for this period of time. Before you finish, you could bring up that aspiration. All of this is dedicated towards the end of suffering, to attain, realize Nibbana, realize the Four Noble Truths. You make that aspiration for yourself. And then you can also do it, say, if you ever make, particularly it's powerful when you do dana offerings. So say you go to temples or any kind of activity with Sangha and you make a formal offering of food or other items, whether it's sort of said there's a formal declaration of offering Sangha dana or something, or you're just there on your own making your aspiration, maybe just before or when the monks are giving a blessing is the sort of traditional time to do it. You make your aspiration, this dana offering may it contribute to my realization of Nibbana. And that's another good time, because your mind tends to be very focused and in a good space, good wholesome attitude at that time. So that's another good time.
Sadhu Lumpur. For chanting Itipiso 108 times, would it be all right if I chant only the recollection of the Buddha portion 108 times due to time constraints?
Yes, it's okay. Many people do it that way. When we say the Buddha portion, that chant is usually divided into 3 sections, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So it's quite common for people just to recite the Buddha portion over again if they're doing it for many times. There's a certain room for flexibility here. Some people like to do all 3 together, and you could do it slightly less times. You could do it 28 times or 32 times or any significant number. Often they say do it as many times as your age, depending how old you are. So the older you get, the more samadhi you're going to get, because you're going to chant more times. So that's good, isn't it? The older you get. But you can decide for yourself how many times you'll chant, whether you'll do just the Buddha portion or all 3. It's all good, and you just see what works for you, and it may vary as well depending on how much time you have available, what the situation is. If it's some special occasion, say you're in a temple and you can walk around the hall like this, or a chedi, a pagoda, or you go to India or something where you may put more effort into something like this on special occasions, or if it's your birthday. But then there may be more normal occasions where you have your plan, I will chant 108 times just the Buddha portion. That's fine as well. You just see what you can do, but of course the aim is to bring up more mindfulness, more faith, more samadhi through the chanting.
Sadhu Lumpur. What does it mean when we say that Dhamma is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in the end? Thank you, Ajahn, for your kind guidance and advice.
Oh, well, this is one that I reflect on a lot, because we say Adi Kalyanam Maje Kalyanam Pariyosana Kalyanam, and I'm Kalyano. So I am the beautiful monk. But it really means beautiful in the Dhamma, so it's not necessarily physical beauty so much. There's other words for that. It means beautiful in the Dhamma, meaning it's correct. It brings up beautiful mind states, pure, wholesome mind states through practicing and penetrating the Dhamma, whether it's in the beginning, in the middle, in the end. It's beautiful, it's correct, it's the Dhamma that will lead to to Nibbana. Sometimes they say it's referring to beautiful in the beginning is practice of sila, which is essential. In the middle, samadhi. In the end, panya, because ultimately panya, insight, wisdom is what liberates your mind from delusion and attachment. But actually, when we say beautiful, partly it's because all three parts, sila, samadhi, panya, are linked together and are really inseparable. That's why it's beautiful. So sila alone wouldn't be properly beautiful. It's still good, but it's not as good as with samadhi and panya, if you see what I mean. So it's the wholesome nature of the practice. So you could use another word. You might not just say beautiful, you might say wholesome. Sometimes they translate it as good. But it's beauty as in terms of the mind, the heart. A beautiful heart is a heart that is free from defilement, free from greed, anger and delusion.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. I've spent a long time trying to understand and resolve things, and recently something has become much quieter. I can see painful realities without fighting them internally in the same way. Grief is still there, but there is less resistance. It seems to be happening through allowing rather than trying. How do I integrate that wisely without grasping at it or making it into another spiritual achievement? How do I know the difference between genuine letting go and simply being exhausted or bypassing something? And when there is less internal resistance, but still grief, vulnerability, and ordinary human preferences, what does Buddhist practice ask of me at this stage? Is the practice simply to continue meeting whatever arises with awareness, metta and equanimity, without needing to make the process go anywhere?
More or less, yes. Sounds like you understand. And you probably are also aware already, as you've described, that as we're practicing and we experience different kinds of painful realities, suffering, grief, whatever it may be, our tendency, our initial reaction when we're not fully aware, not fully understanding, is to push away. Because no one likes pain, grief, suffering. We try to get rid of it. Whereas the aim is to try and bring your mind to the point where it's strong enough, steady enough, clear enough, peaceful enough to just know it rather than push it away. Like you say, to know with awareness, full awareness, with metta and equanimity, which tend to come with that. So if something is painful, this is painful, but there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm not going to create more suffering out of it. I'm not going to try and destroy it, get rid of it. I'll just know it with awareness. You could say accepting, but it isn't like accepting in a kind of passive way. It's an accepting with mindfulness and understanding. When you can do that, then there's really nothing that can cause you any more suffering. The more you can do that, the less you'll suffer. Because we suffer, we often, compound our suffering. We have suffering, you have grief, you've lost somebody or something that you value and you want, and then you don't like the grief, so you try and push that away. You're not happy because you're grieving. You've lost the thing in the first place, and then you're grieving, and then you're not happy that you're grieving. And we just make it worse, don't we? We continue it, and one thing leads to another, more and more suffering. So our aim is actually to come back to mindfulness, to know it. Oh, it's like this, grief is like this, loss is like this, but not to try and get rid of it or fight it, which is no, it's like this. Because that's the truth. If that's what's happened, that is the truth of life.
Sadhu Lumpur. Are there any more questions?
There's a question in our hall here, yeah? It's all right, you just sit there, I can explain to it.
I was wondering, what are the actions or karma that one can do to increase the likelihood of a human rebirth, as opposed to, say, a deva rebirth? Because I understand sort of similar as keeping three steps in a deva, maybe it's more efficient in losses, but I don't understand how human rebirth is direct or how would one direct their actions to a human.
So for the benefit of listeners, there was a question, how can we make the karma for human rebirth as opposed maybe to a deva rebirth? So generally speaking, in Buddhism we're teaching to make good karma through our actions of body, speech and mind, and particularly the mind. Good actions, when brought to fruition through our life, well, they'll tend to lead to good rebirth, what we call good rebirth in a good destination. So that may be human destination, or it may be what we call a deva or heavenly destination. If one was to be reborn in the heaven realm, that would depend on the strength of the merit made, the good karma made through the life. So particularly, the strongest kinds of good karma, other than that will lead to nibbana, the strongest kinds of good karma might be developing samadhi, states of jhana and samadhi, so that may lead to rebirth in a Brahma realm, higher heaven realm. Or people who practice a lot of generosity, precepts, kindness, compassion, and maybe meditation as well, may be reborn in deva realms, so there's 6 main heaven realms. As far as human rebirth goes, it's generally favoured because in the human realm, as you know, because you're all humans, unless there's some devas listening, but if you're human listening, you'll know the human realm is mixed up with a mixture of pleasure and pain, isn't it? You're born with a human body. It is not all pleasure, but it's not all pain either. It's a mixture. Some people have more pain than pleasure, some people more pleasure than pain, of course, but the human body is this kind of vehicle we use to practice, and we're constantly receiving the fruits of past karma, good and bad. So we have pleasure, we have pain. The human body is a very good vehicle for doing good, for practicing the Dhamma, if we put our minds to it, practicing sila, samadhi, panya. The Buddha was obviously born as a human. Many arahants have been born as humans. It's the best realm to really develop the Noble Eightfold Path, develop the insight into the Four Noble Truths to reach Nibbana. Doesn't mean to say it's impossible in heaven realms, it's just maybe harder in a way because of the pleasure and the only having a subtle body, and also the pleasures can be a bit distracting or lead to complacency, and for other reasons as well. So many practitioners make a regular aspiration or remind themselves that they aspire to be reborn as a human. They may still achieve, if they do good through their lives, they may achieve a heavenly rebirth, but not for long, because they're waiting and they wish for a human rebirth. And that's their kind of driving aspiration. And one or two monks I know who are very skilled with their samadhi and they can recollect past lives, they've been reborn in a heaven realm, but they didn't want to stay there. And one story I quote quite often from Luang Por Plien, who told us this story when he was here many years ago. He's passed away now. He would tell the story of his own mother, who obviously had done a lot of good. She had him, and he became a great meditation master. And she practiced for herself. She practiced dana, sila, bhavana. When she died, she was reborn in a heaven realm. But because he, in his samadhi, knew where she was reborn and knew her thoughts, he knew that she wasn't happy there because she could see other devas had more merit than her, bigger, brighter dwellings and brighter jittas, brighter minds. She wanted to improve her mind. She realized she hadn't yet perfected the Buddhist path and hadn't made all the good karma she could make. So she very quickly was reborn as a human. She didn't want to stay as a deva. She wanted to make more good karma. And apparently that's quite a common situation for people who have achieved a heavenly rebirth. If they're Dhamma practitioners, they want to be a human again to carry on practicing. So you have to make that aspiration regularly.
Sadhu, Luang Por. We have a raised hand here.
Hi, Luang Por. Thank you so much for your teaching today. Got a question that's related to something we call here equality, diversity, and inclusion. I don't know if you have that term where you are, but anyway, and it's something which is within the work that I do, and I feel that's part of right livelihood. But there are certain people that really hate anything to do with that, and and in fact, someone's been hounded in my country to suicide. It's a real shock when I saw that. So I guess I'm guessing, but was Buddha an early pioneer around diversity, equality, and inclusion? Why are some people so angry about something that? Anyway, sorry, I can't just make sense. Can't make sense of it, Ajahn.
Yeah, in a sense, it's a complex issue because of people. It's always people who make things complicated and create suffering. But the Buddha said, really, in a sense, there's equal opportunities for everyone in this world, man, woman, whoever's born, because we all have a body and a mind, and we all make karma, and ultimately we make our own karma through our own intentions, and we receive the results of our own karma. Of course, everyone is born into different situations in the world, and as we grow up, different things happen to us, and some people have good situations, some not. Some people are in a place where there's a lot of what we might call equal opportunity, other people often not in such good situation maybe. But ultimately, karma is the determining factor, rather than, even though, in the UK or other countries, politics tends to fill everyone's minds, and politics and political decisions and theories and decisions about how laws are made and how people do things tends to fill people's minds. That seems to be the leading force. Actually, when you practice Buddhism, you come back a little bit further than that and say, actually, each individual is making their karma within the society and whatever the decisions the society make. So it's not to say, politics has no role, and the Buddha himself would give advice to leaders, what you might call politicians these days. I don't think they called them politicians then, but leaders, people in authority, people who would govern. He did give advice, and he encouraged all kinds of gave guidelines about trying to be fair, honest, compassionate, etc. To look after, use the quality of compassion to look after everyone. You might say to be inclusive of the society, to look after everyone. And as I was saying in a talk last night, he was very revolutionary because India was very stuck, and to some extent still is, but in those days very stuck in the caste system. And the Buddha was teaching people to go beyond that with his teachings, because the caste system is really, it's all right if you're born in a good caste with a lot of good opportunities, but if you're born in a lower caste, and often the larger number of people is in the lower caste, you're kind of stuck. And they're very depressed because it's like got no opportunity, no chance to improve your situation, get a lot of pressure, and you're taken advantage of by society. So the Buddha gave people a lot of hope, and that still goes on today. A lot of the lower castes of India often turn to Buddhism and pronounce themselves as Buddhists because they see it as one way to go beyond the caste system. It's not really addressing your question here, but I'm just emphasizing in the end, karma is something we all make, and we all have to be responsible for our own karma. And we have to try to make wise choices, good choices, not to harm others, and then of course to encourage other people to make good choices, use their position if they're in authority, MPs, people. That's the system as it is in most Western countries. If there's an issue that you think is really important, you talk to people and then you get your voice heard through maybe numbers of people, and you get to the MP and try and get the MP to make a law, a rule or something, affect the policy, affect the governance of the country. Generally that's what we're doing. But don't forget you also have your own individual karma that you're making every day, and you may be promoting good causes in society, which may or may not succeed, but you also have to look after your own peace of mind as you're doing that. And don't forget that, because ultimately we're all responsible for our own individual karma. And I think I know the story you're referring to. You're very sad that someone resigned and then killed themselves over reputation and criticism. And I really don't know the truth of the matter, what was true, what was not in that person's life. I just know the headlines, so I can't really comment on it. But obviously people do get very attached to their status, their reputation, and when you lose that for whatever reason, it's a big shock, and some people can't cope, so then they may take their own life. So we have to try and proceed with compassion. Even if people have done something wrong, we'll try to be compassionate and see where you can help them learn or rehabilitate and whatever, rather than just piling on and blaming them and hurting them, because that doesn't help the person who's done something wrong if they have done something wrong, and it doesn't help us because we make more bad karma by doing that. So, we have our ideal of what a compassionate, wise society should be like, but we also have to deal with the reality of how people actually are on the ground, and sometimes they're far apart. There's our ideal and then there's the reality, and we're trying to get them closer and closer together, but it's not always successful. Forgiveness, the Buddhists would say, somebody may or may not have done wrong. They may have misled people, got their position in their job or whatever, in academia. They may have been honest, they may have been dishonest, okay, but treat it with compassion. Don't bully them, hound them, hurt them, but just try and get to the bottom of it and do it in a way that preserves their health and well-being as you're dealing with the situation. They're not immediately thrust into a situation where they're just in shock maybe, and then they take their own life. Obviously that person unfortunately received a lot of flack, a lot of negativity. It sounds like it was too much for them. So it's very sad.
So, Lompo, we have another raised hand here.
Longpa, wish you well. Cheryl here. I have two questions. I'll ask the first question first. I recently came across this sutta where there are the four types of of ways of achieving enlightenment. So the first is a painful but sweet insight, and then the second one is painful, slow insight. Then the third one is I think it's quite a pleasant one, slow insight, and then pleasant one and fast insight. So when I learned about the painful and slow insight, the ways to have that sort of experience is people who practice with the contemplation on unattractiveness, impermanence, and death. I was quite worried because that's the way I practice. So what is Longpo's comments on that?
Yeah, everybody chooses number 4, don't they? They want fast without pain.
Yeah.
But really, that what it means is they want to get enlightenment with the minimum effort. They just want to press a button and be enlightened. So everyone loves to hear stories about people who hear one talk from the Buddha, instantly enlightened, and it's all good, happy ending, with very little suffering on the way. We all want that, and people say, well, I'm going to practice when the Maitreya Buddha comes. I'm waiting for Maitreya Buddha and I'll hear one talk and get enlightened. But you have to remember all those people who got enlightened very quickly listening to a talk from the Buddha practiced beforehand. And they may have gone through a lot of pain and suffering along the way. And okay, the last final lifetime, some people do get very quick results for sure. There are those who get quick results. Some have less pain than others. But when we say quick results with little pain, there's still pain. Believe me, there's still pain, because wherever you're training this mind to let go of defilement, it's painful. It involves some pain, seeing pain, because pain is part of our experience. And you have to see it as not self, as impermanent as not self. But because they get enlightened quickly, there's obviously less pain because it's not for very long. Many other people take longer. I mean, sometimes the longevity is a good thing in the sense gives you lots of opportunity to develop insight and you become very wise. So, someone like Sariputta, who is considered very wise, took twice as long to become enlightened as Mahamoggallana, who had deep samadhi, psychic powers. The insight of everyone who achieves Nibbana or Arahant state is the same. They have the same insight into the Four Noble Truths. But Sariputta twice as long as Mahamoggallana. Why? Because his character allows to thoroughly contemplate everything, backwards, forwards, from this angle, that angle. This thorough contemplation probably meant he was dealing with a lot of painful experiences, pain in the body, unpleasant states of mind, but really getting to be very mindful of how things arise, what causes them, how they're abandoned, thoroughly versing himself in the practice of satipatthana, so that when he did finally become enlightened, he then can teach very well. And Sariputta was very good at bringing non-Buddhists who didn't know the teachings at all into Buddhism and following the Buddha. He was very good at understanding the human mind and very good at explaining, because he'd thoroughly contemplated in so many ways. Doesn't mean to say Mahamoggallana wasn't a good teacher. He was, but maybe in a slightly different ways, different style. So these 4 teachings, or 4 kinds of arahants, say, or people who become enlightened, they are relevant. It's not that they're not true, but I would say just put them on one side for now. Otherwise, they can be a bit misleading. And you say, I just want to be the one who gets there quickly with little pain. Of course, we all want that, but maybe that will make you shy to contemplate painful experiences, or shy to push yourself in the practice. So I wouldn't make them too important yet in your practice. I would get much more experience in the practice of sila, meditation, vipassana, wise reflection and insight. Just do it a lot, and how fast or slow your progress is. If you have to encounter painful experiences and understand them, so be it. We definitely all have to, but the idea is as you become more insightful, you don't create suffering anymore, or less and less. You create suffering in your experience, in your mind. So that's good. Then you learn how to reflect on things without creating stress, worry, anger. Good. Then you're not creating suffering or the causes for more suffering. That's good. And the quicker you learn that, the better. But you also have to accept you've got past karma. So another factor is some people, they've got a lot of past karma. Maybe they've been like Angulimala, or somebody who's killed a lot. They've been a hunter or a housewife who killed a lot of chickens or something in past lives. So they have to go through a lot of painful experiences because of their karma. There's no way around that. But hopefully they develop the path and they develop right view towards all those painful experiences. Whereas someone else may have been keeping sila for many lifetimes, so their life, they have hardly any illness, hardly any pain, hardly anyone else gives them trouble, trouble. So their mind and their life seems quite smooth, trouble-free. They're still practicing and they still have to learn to let go of attachment, but it seems a bit smoother because they have less accumulated bad karma giving its result. So of course people's karma varies, so there will be differences in this way. But as I said, everyone's going to have to go through some pain, at least some pain. So, don't think you want to be this person that has no pain and no difficulty and no struggle and you're going to have some of that, and probably quite a lot. Most people have a lot, I think.
Thank you, Long Po. My second question is about the 8 worldly winds. Did the Buddha meant them as distinct categories, or in one experience we can actually experience like 2 pairs of the 8 worldly winds?
You mean the noble beings, like Arya Pugala?
No, not the noble beings, just the 8 worldly winds.
You mean praise and blame,
Yeah.
gain
Yeah.
and loss, or the worldly dhammas, worldly
Yeah.
winds? The Buddha said you can't have one without the other, because the world is a place of conditions. It's a conditioned place, and all conditions are impermanent. So you get gain, but then you'll get loss, sometimes very quickly, sometimes slowly, sometimes a lot of loss, sometimes a little bit of loss. But wherever there's gain, loss is already kind of coming together with it. But you get loss, well then there's a chance for gain again. So loss can be leading on to gain, gain leads to loss. Praise and blame. There's no one who just gets praise, no one who just gets blame. Some people get a lot of praise, some people get a lot of blame. So the mixture may vary, but there's no one who just has one set of these conditions. They come together. It's a package. And we see that, and that's something to reflect on, isn't it? You just reflect back on your life up to this point. And you reflect, you got lots of praise. And praise, doesn't just mean verbal praise, you are good, you're like this. It can also just mean very positive vibes, loving speech, kind speech. So if you're a baby, most babies get heaped with praise and positive speech until they're a bit older, and then they start being naughty, and then that goes down. They get a bit of blame and criticism, don't be naughty, and all of that. So even just as a kid, the dynamics of praise and blame, praise and criticism are going on, aren't they? And then gain and loss. We have periods where it could be the people we live with. If we're still at home, family may be very poor, and then work hard and get wealthier, and then someone loses all the money in a bad investment and get poor again, or there's a tsunami, or something happens, or someone gets ill and it all falls apart. Life is all up and down, isn't it? Praise and blame, gain and loss, status, loss of status, and pleasure and pain of the body. These things are never fixed and they're never still. That's the nature of the world. That's why the Buddha called them winds. They're constantly blowing around. The wind never just comes from one direction at one time. Like, say, here today, as far as I can remember, today was a fairly still day. We're in the mountains, we get a lot of wind here, but today was fairly still. But then another day it'll be all windy. Sometimes the wind comes from one direction, sometimes another direction. Sometimes the morning is windy, sometimes the middle of the night is windy, sometimes the middle of the day is windy. You know, everything changes. That's why he called them winds, because these experiences are affecting us all the time, sometimes strongly, sometimes very subtly. That's why we have to make our mind very firm with mindfulness and then reflect on anicca, on impermanence. You get the praise, good, but it's impermanent. And then the blame comes, okay, but it's impermanent. And you can use that reflection on change, impermanence, or as Ajahn Chah said, you know, it's not sure, it's not certain, to help you so you don't attach too much and you don't suffer too much with the change. So they praise, you go to work, and one day your boss or your manager or your team, they speak very nicely and nice atmosphere, it's all good. And then something changes in the workplace, the company, and there's a bit of stress, and so you go in and suddenly everyone is stressed. No one's talking to anyone, or they may even be so stressed they're kind of being very short-tempered with each other. You know, it can change, can't it, very quickly. And the world is like that. When things change, it can happen very quickly, and people fall or people come up again. And sometimes someone went through a lot of bad times, suddenly they've come up again. Oh, they're lucky, that's good for them. They got a promotion, or they got a new job, or they got married, or something's happened to them and everything's changed. So it's a reflection, particularly on impermanence. You reflect, oh, these things are impermanent.
Sadhu, Lompo. We have another raised hand here.
Hello, Lumpur. I hope you can hear me well.
I can.
Thank you. Cheryl's question just prompted me to give you some feedback on my question of last week, where I was seeking some advice ahead of my visit to my mother, where I am at the moment. She is next door resting, and how I might deal with the change in my own health. And you encouraged me to exercise compassion and patience, and also consider doing a forgiveness ceremony. And you know what happened? And Cheryl's question about the worldly winds. Last week I felt I could barely speak. I felt so distraught. And now I just feel so much joy, because when I spoke with my mother, I don't know, it was totally unpremeditated. I played her this part of the Q&A from last week, and my mother doesn't speak English, and she's not a Buddhist. And I translated it a bit for her, but she picked up something, and she felt the compassion towards her. And I think when she heard you refer to mum, she knew what that meant. And it was such a wonderful, gentle, soft, joyful moment that we shared. And she has started to ask me, Karen, when are you going back to the monastery? In the UK, I spend a lot of time at Amravati, and she doesn't quite understand much about it, but she feels there is something that is good for me, and that helps her with feeling helpless. She feels helpless towards me, but her encouraging me to continue on that path, that is, dare I say, perhaps empowering for her. It gives her something. So thank you for the opportunity to ask that question, and thank you for your guidance. It's really touched her that Dhamma worked in that wonderful way. So thank you so much.
Well, if when you talk to her next, then say the monk that she saw on the screen says hi.
I will play the recording to her. Bless you. Thank you.
What does she speak? Does she speak German or Swiss Deutsch?
Yes, yes. No, German.
Just German.
Yes,
Oh, I don't know
yes,
much German. I just know like Guten Morgen and Guten Abend. That's all I know.
Danke. Danke.
Danke, yeah, I know danke.
Thank you, Lumpur. Thank you. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next question. Ajahn, how does one practice Dhamma happily rather than feeling guilty that I am not practicing hard enough, or feeling guilty that I am enjoying sense pleasures?
Yeah, I think most people go through this back and forth, isn't it? You sort of put effort into your practice and then you slack on off, and if you slacken off, usually it means you're looking for other things and you get a bit of enjoyment from sense pleasures, and then you feel guilty, back to the Dhamma and put more effort in, back again, back and forth. You just keep at it. Basically, you keep up the patient effort, and you have to balance what's going on. Like, it's not to say you should go and indulge in sense pleasures, but if you do, accept that that's just the weakness of the mind, various accumulated attachments, you might say, rather than feeling guilty and making it worse by saying, I'm wrong, I'm bad, and creating a sense of a guilty self. Just try and reflect on it with some wisdom and say, okay, I have these accumulated attachments, things that I identify with as pleasurable, probably for many years. And sometimes my practice is not yet at its peak, so I'm not fulfilling myself, not getting so much joy from the Dhamma. So I've kind of fall back on the happiness that I've achieved. It's your merit. If you have access to sense pleasures, that's your merit, your good karma. But you have to remember, as you're enjoying sense pleasures, you're using that karma up. That opportunity to practice the Dhamma has been used up. And of course, you keep using it up, eventually it's gone. Either through the end of your life, or just your mind is too far from the Dhamma to get back to it. So kind of keep that in mind. So if you have to relax with some sense pleasures for a while, once in a while, okay, but rather than feeling guilty, just say, this is not going to last, this is not ultimate happiness yet. And just reflect on the impermanence of them, so that then you can come back to practicing Dhamma. And of course, if you meditate regularly, you'll get used to doing that. You'll get used to seeing the mind that moves between either wanting to enjoy things, wanting things, or wanting to get rid of the bits you don't like, including the feeling of guilt and the feelings associated with being discontent. You want to get rid of them. So mind is flipping around. But as you meditate, you keep bringing up the mindfulness and reflecting on impermanence. Hopefully you'll find your mind gets more balanced and more in the middle, and then less guilty, less indulgence, and more just being mindful of the way things are. So we often compare it to like a pendulum of a clock that's gradually becoming more centered rather than swinging back and forth violently. You're coming to a point where you're neither indulging too much and you're not going towards guilt and self-criticism either. You're just coming back to the middle. The more you practice, the more that will happen.
Sadhu Lampo. The next question. Venerable Ajahn, Satipatthana Sutta's observing feelings as aversion or craving seems paradoxical, since these can't coexist with a wholesome state of mindfulness. This is a basic question, but some comments help in developing wisdom on triggers rather than pure samatha states? Thank you.
Well, feelings from the Satipatthana Sutta, we know feeling is just feeling, or that's your aim, is to know feeling in the feeling, meaning feeling is just feeling. Pleasant, neither pleasant nor painful, or painful. Three main kinds, physically based, mentally based. Feeling is just feeling, and when mindfulness is good and there and you're aware, you can be aware of feeling, and it arises, passes away, and it's not self. But you know it. But what happens is feeling, when we're not so mindful, we're not so aware, it triggers craving. So painful feelings tend to trigger aversion, because normally speaking, nobody likes the feeling of pain. So then straight away some kind of aversion, limited, minor or major aversion will arise. That's what you're seeing, is the cause and effect, how craving is triggered by feeling. And if mindfulness improves, often you can just be aware of feelings as feelings and how they're arising in the mind. You're preventing the mind going into craving. And that works with pleasure as well. But of course, both of them are intoxicating. The feeling and then the habit of going towards aversion, negativity, complaining, hatred, anger, or with desire for pleasant feeling, you're going towards attraction, fantasy, wanting more, indulging in. These are intoxicating, and it's just such a well-trodden pathway of the mind. If we don't do anything, it's just habitual, and it tends to get worse as the longer we live in the world. But now, as you practice mindfulness, you can investigate, like you say. You don't necessarily have to go into a deep state of samadhi, but have enough mindfulness to see what's going on. And the more you direct mindfulness back to your body and mind, your khandhas, you'll notice how feeling is leading on to things. It's not feeling alone, there's perception as well. So you have a feeling, and then there'll be a perception, I don't like this, and the perception is, what you remember associated with that feeling, or what it triggers in terms of your memory, your perception, which kind of feeds the thoughts and the mental formations. So, one thing you'll notice with painful feeling and aversion is there's often that sense of, I've had this before. Quite often it's a repeat of something. I've had this before. I don't want this. I don't like this. I don't deserve this. This is not right. I can't stand it anymore. Depending on what the situation is, suddenly the perception is going straight into a whole new self, and then you get the negative thinking. If you could just hold enough attention at that moment, there's the feeling, and it's just a feeling. And you don't create the self and the aversion in that. That would be great, wouldn't it? And sometimes we can do it. And sometimes we fail. Okay, try again. And you just try and bring the mindfulness back when you can.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question. Dear Lumpo, how does one practice mudita? Thank you.
Sometimes it's easy. You just wish everybody well, wish yourself well, and you are well, so you're wishing yourself to continue being well. Other people are well, you wish them to continue to be well. Good things have happened, you're appreciating them, you're open to them. So it's the opposite of jealousy and envy and negativity. So sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. Maybe when we have more suffering, more problems in one way or another, we're more stressed. Something good happens to other people, often it's like, no, it doesn't fit with my worldview at the moment. I'm fed up and they're getting good, I can't be happy for them. The mudita doesn't happen, it doesn't arise maybe. Even for ourselves sometimes, if you've been suffering a lot, something good can happen, like, I don't know, you've been ill, a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort in hospital, going through many things, surgery, this or that, and the doctor comes and says, I've got good news, the tests show that things are on the mend, But you still feel terrible, and it doesn't really make any practical difference to the fact you're miserable, stuck in hospital. So you sort of go, oh, good news. So it's good news, but you can't really enjoy it yet because your mind is so caught in the suffering. So sometimes even mudita for ourselves isn't yet forthcoming. So you have to work at it, you have to practice. And the more you practice the Brahmaviharas, all of them, and they're very closely linked, the easier it gets. And it's a common, it's something Lumpur Cha mentioned. He said it's in modern society, mudita is often lacking. You know, most people understand metta, they may not always have metta, but they understand it. But mudita is often the sort of the hidden Brahmavihara that we really need to focus on because our society is very competitive. And so someone else gets ahead, instead of being happy for them, we sort of, oh, how can they get ahead? And we compete, and we've got to pull them back or pull them down. You know, we're jealous, we're competitive, we can't accept their success, we're cynical, it's always them, why them, not me, all of this. Our modern society doesn't promote a lot of mudita, so you have to work at it. But if you work at it, it gets easier. And that's one of the nice things I've always found living with monks, and particularly in Thailand, there is a lot of mudita. Very naturally, you get it a lot. And it brings a lot of joy, and it comes with joy, it's from joy, it supports joy. So, you know, isn't that a good thing?
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question. Dear Lumpur, may I kindly ask if you have ever come across a monk who practices energy healing?
Yes. Strictly speaking, the Buddha said for monks, our primary purpose is not to become a healer or a doctor or to practice that. This is part of our Vinaya, our monastic discipline. But of course, as you train the mind in samadhi and other qualities, the brightness and the focus and the one-pointedness of the mind gives you certain knowledge and skills. And for some, it can particularly come out in the form of healing, sometimes self-healing. So most monks who experience samadhi and develop more samadhi notice it brings with it well-being, and the positive energy of samadhi can have at least somewhat of a healing effect on your own body. And then if you spread metta, maybe it can even have some modest or occasionally more solid sort of impact on someone else who's ill, can. But it's not our primary goal or aim. We're training the mind to purify it from defilement, greed, anger and delusion. So this is more, you might say, like a bit like a byproduct, something that some monks have more affinity with, how their metta manifests. They give boost to people's illness. Even Aryapugalas, what they do is try to help people through their bad karma. People with faith, people who have helped them, people who have faith in the Buddha and the Buddhist teaching. So how do you do that? Well, maybe somebody has some bad karma manifesting in the form of illness, injury, accident. You can't wipe away their bad karma or change their past, but you can bless them, you can spread metta to them, and the positive inputs of the good energy of someone, particularly an Aryapugala whose mind is pure or fairly pure, can have a very good impact on somebody's mind. They can have a very good feeling, they can think more positively, the sense of well-being is boosted, and that can help the healing process. It can be a very subtle thing, so it's hard to quantify or prove. So there'll be doubters, okay, people doubt that, okay, that's fine. But my experience is it is true. Either my direct experience for myself or other people I've lived with and teachers I've lived with. So the mind, particularly the mind of someone who practices good sila and has insight and samadhi, can have a healing effect. And particularly if they're directing the mind to do that, it can do that. But as I said, it's not the primary task. We're not here to be spiritual healers. So the ones who do spiritual healing tend to be more lay people rather than monks, if the monk is keeping the Vinaya. But just depends.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. Dear Ajahn, how should I reflect skillfully is I have received recognition and affirmation from my bosses. My bosses may wish to offer me a position.
Oh, well, we can express mudita for you. I'm glad to hear things are going well and that your bosses appreciate you and that they're offering you new positions. Good. But everything is not certain, not sure. So don't, rush in there, mentally rush in and sort of, oh, everything is going to be good, all my problems are solved. I mean, with new positions, new responsibilities come. Sometimes those responsibilities bring stress, burden, pressure. Sometimes they bring more competition. Other people who didn't get it may be jealous of you or competing with you. That's the world. These 8 worldly winds are always at work. So with success, sometimes there's a little bit of aversion, jealousy from others, competition, or just our own attachment. Maybe we forget ourselves, become too attached to the success, and then things change. Maybe we go to a period of stagnation after the success. Things go flat. Then we feel, oh, before everything seemed to be going well and now it's gone flat. You may not be going backwards or down, but you're just flat. No more promotions in the offing. So, I thought everything was going so well. So you have to be ready for the changing dynamics of life. So enjoy your success, appreciate it, recognize why it's happened, maybe. But don't get lost in it, don't get drunk on it, don't attach to it, because everything is uncertain. But use it as a platform to build more, to do more, and do more good for yourself and others.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. Dear Lompo, may I respectfully ask what Buddhism teaches about people who are homosexual or transgender? Is this considered something natural, or is it understood as being related to karma?
Well, karma, of course. Everything is resultant karma. And karma is natural. It's a law of nature, so it kind of is both. But, whatever your sexual orientation, be good. The practice of the Noble Eightfold Path doesn't change, does it? Sila, Samadhi, Panya, those are beyond gender, and it takes you to beyond gender. You have to accept your body and in your mind, that's your karma that you're born with and you grow up with. But that's not the end of the story, is it? It's not the whole of your life, it's only part of your life. Your goal is Nibbana, and that's beyond gender, it's beyond the body, it's beyond the 5 khandhas. So try and see the big picture as well, and just try and keep the 5 precepts regularly. My suggestion, keep the 5 precepts, listen to the Dhamma, meditate if you can, listen to the Dhamma, reflect on the Dhamma in your daily life, and cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path, whoever you are, whether you're single, married, homosexual, bisexual, whatever. Just use the Noble Eightfold Path to help you improve your mind and your life situation and make good karma, and try not to make bad karma, and try not to hurt people and harm people. Whoever you are, wherever you are, male, female, young, old, wherever.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. The ego can become inflated and bring about a lot of mental proliferations that do not bring about a peaceful mind.
That looks like a statement, and it seems more or less true, yes, true. Ego is this modern word we use for basically this attachment to self, sense of self, so you might call that in Buddhism Sakkaya Ditthi, or Attavada-upadana. Upadana means clinging, attachment, attavada to self, or the idea of self, self-view. So self-view can become inflated. It can also become deflated. We can have a very poor view of ourselves, or feel very hopeless or terrible or no barami, or we can feel very inflated. I have lots of barami, I'm arrogant, I'm the best. Or we can feel in the middle. We can feel I'm the same as everyone, and I'm just summarizing, generalizing here. But we all are born with self-view, grow up with self-view, and that's the cause of our suffering, or the initial cause of our suffering. There's a lot more subtle defilements we experience as well. But because of attachment to conceit and views, what we call ditthi and mana, or ego, we have mental proliferation, good and bad, likes and dislikes, what we feel is right, what we feel is wrong, is constantly leading to proliferation. So it's kind of the nuts and bolts of meditation practice, and especially learning to train yourself, is to recognize this. How aware we attach to ego, we cause ourselves suffering. We don't want to suffer, so be on your guard for that attachment to the ego in whatever form it manifests.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. Dear Lompo, 2 days ago I attended the birthday gathering of a bisexual friend where around 40 people from the LGBT community were present. I noticed that many of them are promiscuous, having multiple partners at the same time, and do not regard these actions as unwholesome. May I kindly ask for your advice on how I might appropriately speak to them about karma and the consequences of such actions, especially as they are not practicing Buddhism? How can we explain that having multiple sexual partners or sleeping around can be unwholesome without being judgmental or causing offense?
I think you're going to have to manage your expectations. You might not be able to talk about it because the whole point is they're not in that kind of place where they're ready to listen to Buddhism and take the precepts. And that's the world, isn't it? There are many people in the world and they have different values, different behaviors. And if they're not open yet to the Buddhist teachings, they haven't maybe seen the suffering of what they're doing. Maybe they just say they're enjoying themselves. You might just have to let them get on with it for a while until one day they're more ready to look at it more closely and see the suffering. Anyone who meditates will immediately start becoming aware of the suffering of having multiple sexual partners, being promiscuous. It just becomes very quickly very obvious. But if they don't meditate, they don't listen to Dhamma, reflect on Dhamma, they may not see anything wrong with it, and they may see you as just a bad guy. They say, what kind of Buddhist are you? You're so unkind, criticizing them. Like you say, they'll see you as judgmental or offensive. So tread carefully. You may not be their teacher. We have to accept, people's teachers, the people who are going to help them, guide them, may be varied. It may not be us. You can always be kind to people, and that's a good starting point. Be kind, tolerant. And if ever they come to you with their problems or discuss things, well, maybe you can introduce some Buddhist concepts. That's what I would do. But when I first became a Buddhist before I was a monk, I had the same sort of thing. People drinking, taking drugs, multiple partners. My main kind of thing was I'm not going to do that anymore. Not that I did anyway, but I'm not going to do that. I'm sort of stepping back, and I was the one receiving all the judgment and the flack. They're all going, hey, you're boring, you're no fun. But I knew why I was doing it, and I was just patient and willing to be patient with the insults and the criticisms, because I knew why I was doing it, and I had the goal of becoming a monk. So I had to put up with it. So I didn't blame them. I knew exactly why, because I would have thought like that a year or two before, perhaps. So I understood where they're coming from. So you have to be very tolerant, kind, be kind, compassionate, and maybe someone you meet, 40 people, you're hardly going to be able to teach 40 people, but maybe one person in that group is suffering in some way. The jealousies, the rejections, the disappointments, and maybe you can talk to them when the time is right and introduce the idea that, we don't even know ourselves. If you have a partner, you're doubling your suffering because you don't know yourself very well. Now you've got to know your partner and get on well with them. It's already hard enough. If you have multiple partners, it's just increasing the suffering, isn't it? Once you've understood this point, it's very obvious. But until you've sort of stepped back and done a bit of meditation, you probably don't get it. You can laugh about it, but you won't yet get it. We suffer. And the more partners you have, the more you suffer. It's just simple logic. Do your best. Be kind, tolerant, and just see where you can introduce some Dhamma where you can.
Sadhu Lompo. Are there any more questions?
Well, maybe enough for tonight. Many questions, so we'll leave it there. And wish you all well with your practice, and see you next time.